Right now, 1 in 4 New York City children is experiencing food insecurity. And with food costs rising at the fastest rate in 40 years, more New Yorkers than ever before need our help. This year, City Harvest will rescue and deliver more than 75 million pounds of food for families across our city. You can help City Harvest feed families in need by supporting their Share Lunch, Fight Hunger campaign. Give $20 and help feed 46 children in our city. Visit cityharvest.org to donate now. Thank you for standing with City Harvest to feed families across the 5 boroughs.
Hear that? That's the sound of peace, knowing your next travel adventure is sorted. At Intrepid Travel, we take care of everything, so you don't have to. Join a small group adventure in the United States or Canada and let our local leaders show you the hard-to-find spots in familiar destinations. Whether you're kayaking through the Alaskan wilderness or following the music trail from Nashville to New Orleans, Intrepid's trips will take you deeper, supporting local communities along the way. Head to intrepidtravel.com to book your next adventure. Intrepid Travel. Good trips only.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. What's up, everybody? How are you doing on this fine evening or morning or whatever time it is when you're listening to it? Because let's be honest, time is a flat circle, right? As the great actor Matthew McConaughey said in the first season of True Detective, which is an all-timer for me. And if you haven't watched it, just go ahead and watch it because it's available on, I was about to call it HBO Max, but no, it's called Max, guys. I don't know if you got that memo or advertising campaign, but regardless, we're not here to talk about streaming platforms. Well, technically we are, but you get the point. We are talking with people who are involved in independent music, punk, hardcore, indie rock, metal, emo, whatever genre you're talking about. That is what I personally care about here, and that is what I know you, I'm pointing at you, the listener, care about. You are listening to an interview that I did with Sergie Loobkoff, who I am totally mispronouncing his last name, and I appreciate the fact that I'll probably get like 3 or 4 emails, probably one from Sergie being like, you really butchered my last name. And for that, I apologize because I've just said Sergie in the past. Sergie plays in bands like Samiam, who just released their new record called Stowaway on Pure Noise, and I freaking love that thing. It is so, so good. So I highly suggest that you listen to that record. You can also listen to Knapsack. They're doing if I'm not mistaken, they re-released all of their original recordings on vinyl. And yeah, so Knapsack's also another amazing band. He also plays in Ways Away with a friend of the show, Jesse Barnett from Stick to Your Guns. And then, he's just a very prolific musician. Also played in Solea. Like, let's not forget that. But Sergie, he is a very blunt individual. He actually, before we started to record, he was like, yeah, sometimes I get in trouble for saying things that I do. And, I could totally see that because he likes to shoot it straight. And I know that these conversations, are meant to shoot it straight. But there are times where, people can be a little guarded, and I understand that completely. But Sergie is not one of those people. So we get into it, and it's really, really fun. But let's talk about how you can support the show for absolutely free, because I do not want you, the consumer, for going under any financial issues, because let's be honest, it is a really tough world out there, and everybody's just kind of trying to survive in this economy and whatever it is that we're going through. But you can support the show for absolutely free. First of all, just post about this episode in social media. Tag the show, tag Sergie, whoever it is. Let people know that this was a good chat, because I personally think it is. You can also rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave a rating on Spotify if you're listening to this show on the platform of Spotify. And you can always email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. That would be great to hear from you. I'm literally on a plane to New York City right now as this episode is going up, because I'm doing some podcast work stuff out there. But this show will not continue to cease, even though life is busy. And speaking about being busy, I will be attending the Outbreak Festival again this summer. I will be helping them launch their very own Outbreak podcast, which will, I'll tease it. I'll let you know. You will be one of the first people to know. about what's happening on that particular show. But I'm doing some live podcasts there at the event. It's going to be a great time, so I'm excited for that. Anyways, let's talk to Sergie, okay? Let's get into it and listen to the new Samiam record. Like I said, it's called Stowaway. Came out on Pure Noise back in March. But yeah, it's just a great listen. I highly encourage you to listen to that. So here is our discussion with Sergie. I remember discovering Samiam very vividly because as I started to get into, more independent-minded like punk and hardcore and starting to scour the pre-internet zines and all that sort of stuff, New Red Archives, that label that was, very influential in the mid-'90s, there was a band on there called Two Line Filler. I think they were from Canada, if I'm not mistaken, but they, I remember and don't specifically call me out on what zine, but I remember reading an interview with them where they mentioned Samiam. And I, as a kid of a certain age, you just devour every little breadcrumb. And I remember getting into you guys because of that. And the only reason I tell you the story is because I'm sure many people have reflected on all of these weird ways they have either gotten into your band, via just thanks list or whatever, or in the modern era of just like finding out about you guys because, you're on Pure Noise or whatever. Is it interesting for you to kind of see those stories reflected back to you on like, how the hell did you find our band? Like, is it interesting or just kind of, funny for you to hear these anecdotes?
I feel like it was really like amazing in the beginning of Samiam that anyone would know who we are, and it was flattering, and it was like very, very like rewarding. And now I just figure it's not weird, it's not funny, it's just what happens, and because not to sound like an asshole, and maybe I am, but a lot of terrible bands are extremely well known, and a lot of like terrible bands are like literally 1 million people know of them, and just whatever, how tens of thousands know what a Samiam is, right?
Sure.
So do I think it's now rewarding or weird? I go, no, it's just the fucking way that shit is, and you do something what artistic or creative in any way, and someone's bound to find out about it. What you touched on though about this Pure Noise thing is like, we've been on like, we haven't been on a label in, I'd say 15 years, really. Like about 15 years ago, although we were technically on labels, I feel like Pure Noise is the first time no idea. I guess sort of people think that's a kind of cool a label, whether that's erroneous or not, in my opinion. But no one was finding out about Samiam from New Red Archives in the 2000s or Hopeless, because people like Samiam don't like Hopeless, right?
Sure.
Or any of those Hopeless bands. And I feel like, although Pure Noise has like hardcore, and hardcore people aren't necessarily like Samiam, I'm hoping that being on a label that's sort of the moment right now, like Pure Noise, will, for the first time in a long time, like just expose our band to a wider audience than just like our core group of people. And we're going to see.
Right. Well, I mean, it does make sense, especially based on the fact that, like you said, there is almost that when a band lasts a long period of time and has gone through a variety of trends, not even just musically, but the fact that, or how people consume music. And clearly you have lived through all of the, booms and busts of independent music. So it's kind of like that. And I don't mean to compare Samiam to a cockroach, but you're going to see a cockroach at some point, and it's like, you should be aware of us by now. But then the kids that obviously have never been exposed to you, it's the, sort of guilty by association where it's like, oh yeah, like now I'll check this out because it's part of a playlist, and like, oh, this band has like, 7 records before it. I'm going to check this out or whatever.
Yeah. Well, like Samiam is not a popular band. Samiam has a certain amount of like cachet or status in this real micro genre of music, right? And I feel like, people that like Samiam or know about Samiam think that Samiam is like perhaps like some like bigger band than we are, but I see ourselves as like this overgrown garage band, and just the fact that we've been around for like literally decades, maybe the appearance that we're like bigger than we are. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
what you were saying is totally true. It's like you stick around for like 3 decades, and you're bound to get some fans. And you might, like, if I was going to be negative about Sam, I would say like we're probably the bottom line of how known a band could be for a band that stuck around for so long.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I also think to whatever glass half full it. I think it is the fact that the legacy lives on, not just because you are quote unquote resting on your laurels, but the fact that you all continue to feel a desire to be creative. And I mean, you in many respects have obviously been constantly contributing to independent music from a output perspective. So it's like, there's that idea of just like, well, I still have something to say, and whether or not people care about it, like that doesn't necessarily matter, but like the influence is there regardless of other bands that either have picked up on it or not. So
yeah, I often get the question, like, how long are you going to be able to do this? Or like, why do you still do it?
Yep.
And I'm just like, well, first of all, I have no idea why I do it. I'm definitely, I think a lot of people answer that by saying, this is all I ever wanted to do, and this is all I know what to do, how to do. And I'm sort of stuck with that. I'm not that guy because, I didn't like start being in bands and say, okay, this is my career. I went to college. I didn't go. We did our first tour, which was Europe, 2 weeks after I graduated from from UC Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And I purposely just didn't. We could have gone on tour before that, but I was like, I got to finish college before I do this, right? Which is like totally different than the experience of a lot of people who are just like, and attitude than a lot of people that are just basically like, music's my life and that's all I care about.
Right. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And we'll hit on that a little bit later, but wanted to focus on you as a person. I know sort of from a biographical perspective, I know you were born and raised in Northern California, and I know you have a twin brother. And that in and of itself is a very unique experience. And I'm guessing that your twin brother didn't get pulled into the music direction like you did. He was kind of exploring something else.
No, he did.
Okay.
And, he played guitar first, actually, because I originally was a drummer. And he played guitar. It's weird, like with anything in life, or from my perspective, shit just happens, and who knows why. And basically, he's been in bands. He was in a band called Cutlass Supreme. They actually have recently been playing that put out an EP on Some, which was I think his name is Matt Pincus and Walter Schreifels and Sammy's label in the early.
Yep. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, but like that was his main band, although he was in other bands. But I don't know. It's really weird that he didn't at least just go as far with it as I have, because he's really good and writes cool songs and stuff. And he's very similar. Like, he doesn't sing, I don't sing, or we're terrible at singing, but plays guitar and writes kind of cool songs, right? Musically. And it's weird. I mean, people think twins are weird as fuck anyway.
Yep.
we don't dress alike. We rebelled from being like that, but we're both like play guitar and
right.
skateboarded. We both do like graphic design, although we have sort of different set of skills in graphic design and stuff. Yeah.
No, that was because I find it so interesting when siblings, follow each other's path in regards to, the older sibling kind of shows the younger sibling what's up, and then they, go to shows together, get into, art or movies or whatever. But then it is the sometimes inverse reaction where people are like, okay, that's my brother or my sister's thing. I got to stay far away from it. So that was the reason I was curious about that. But that's cool. I didn't know the Cutlass Supreme. I definitely remember that EP that came out on some. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And so what was your family structure like as far as like mom and dad in the house? Did you have any other siblings?
No, it was just us. And, they got divorced when we were pretty young somewhere. I'm not sure how old we were, maybe 11 or 10 or whatever. And that really wasn't like some kind of big, looking back, I feel like we were a little bit like selfish little shits because it didn't bother us at all. At least not on a conscious level. Like people lament about their parents getting divorced and how terrible that was. It's like we were kind of a little bit like, wow, this is great. We don't have to deal with all that freaking fighting anymore, and that's kind of a selfish attitude. We did, and I say that like kids can be selfish, not like I was a particularly selfish person, but but looking back, like I didn't really like worry about like, for example, my mom or whatever. I was more like, oh, cool, we're not fighting.
Right. Yeah. It's like things are going to quiet down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so I say that because, I'm sure a lot of like people you interview are like artists and stuff, they're like, I'm a product of a broken home and man, it was rough. And it's like, it really wasn't rough for us, but yeah, that did happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And when you started to, be a kid, get out in the world a little bit, were you attracted to sports? Did you care about school? What sort of, identity did you start to attach yourself to?
Like I used to be, my brother never stopped being like a sporto. Like I used to tease him in the times when I was always touring and doing things that are, punk rock's a little antithetical to the like jock kind of thing usually.
Yep.
And so I was not always, and I'm not in hardcore. That's a weird thing about hardcore that I discovered was like, holy shit, all these guys, a lot of these guys are jocks. A lot of these, I consider punk and hardcore to be outsider music. And then I Southern California hardcore, I was like, these guys actually seem like this is not outsider music. These are like the opposite. They're the kids that stuff the other kids in the garbage can kind of kids.
Yep.
But anyway, like, when I was a little kid, of course, I love the A's and I love the 49ers or whatever. And then for years and years, like the whole 90s, most of the 2000s, if not all the 2000s, that was my brother's thing. And I'd sort of like just go, oh, you Jocko, you're into the 49ers. And then unfortunately now, like I'm old, so I can't do things I used to love, like skateboard in the same way, and I don't drink and I don't do drugs and I don't like go out and like score chicks or whatever you call it when you're a young dipshit male.
Sure.
And so I find myself being into like the fucking 49ers or the Warriors or whatever now, and sometimes I get depressed, like, oh no, I'm what I always hated.
Well, I think that whatever, I'm giving you a pass here, but I think it's that, there's nothing wrong with that because clearly there's that sort of, especially in a fractured environment of what we live in, like so many people, regardless of age, are craving that sort of monoculture experience of like, man, remember how cool it was when like everybody talked about a movie coming out or whatever? And it's like now, the only things that people can collectively talk about are just like, remember what happened on the news and maybe a Marvel movie or something. So, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just personally, I lament about it. I don't think there's anything wrong for all the sportos out there listening.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, I'm the same way. I mean, you kind of go in and out of cycles with it where it's like, there are some times where you pay super close attention to it. And there's other times where you're just like, that's fine. And it's like, it'll be there when I, care about it again or whatever. Yeah. Did you care about school? Like, how are your grades from that perspective?
Well, like growing up, you're like early 40s, right? Like,
Correct.
It's different now because college seems to be such a different dynamic with how much it costs and going in debt and stuff. And there seems to be this big giant dialogue about college being like, is college a waste of time and a scam to take people's money, put them in debt? But when I was a kid, my attitude was, I never made a choice to go to college. It was always just implicit I was going to go to college. And it was always implicit that I was going to get mostly A's and B's for that reason, for that end goal. And I never thought about it. I never thought it was an option to be a fuck up, so to speak. And so I got good grades and I got into Cal, and then I went to Cal, and I didn't want to go to Cal, actually. First of all, I wanted to leave Berkeley and go somewhere else. And actually, my dad took me because I do graphic design. That's my career, but I got a degree in architecture because they didn't offer anything except fine art in Berkeley. But when I was, a senior in high school, my dad took me down to Los Angeles to go tour Art Center because my big thing is I wanted to be an illustrator. And I took this tour, and I was just my mouth was like sort of a gate, like walking through the studios where they had walking through the studios, particularly, even though I wasn't interested in automotive design, but walking through the studios, and there was people building like full on clay models and wooden models of cars. And I was just like, holy shit, this school is the shit, right? Like, people all from the world go to Art Center, and this is where I want to go to school. Got really excited, nervous, and like intimidated, but also excited. And then we were on the short plane flight back to home, and on the plane ride, really casually, my dad said, "What'd you think?" And I was just like, oh, like my mind was blown. I was like, "Oh my God, that was just so incredible! Like, that would be so incredible." Go there, and he goes, very casually, he just goes, "So how are you going to pay for that?"
You. That was it, right?
I wasn't like that. I definitely didn't have the kind of relationship with my father. I still don't, where I could like say, "Could I borrow $5?" Because we never had allowance. He was an immigrant, and he had he had a really, really rough upbringing. And I feel like, like little shit kids complain that they only get like $30 allowance now or whatever kids get. And I was like, until I got my first job when I was 15, I never had a dime in my pocket.
Sure.
Because, like, money was not, it was like Star Trek, in Star Trek, there's no currency. It's like this alternate or future universe or whatever, where there is no money. It's like, that was my life. It's like, I wasn't a poor kid in the respect that I was starving or I didn't have, necessities, but I just didn't have money because my parents didn't believe in a kid being able to have any money. I mean, what are you going to do with it? You're just going to get in trouble with it, I guess, was the attitude. And also, it just, in retrospect, it taught me a great lesson. And I'm just like, I'm actually probably made me tight with money, like a little tight little miser, even now when I have a little bit of money. Why am I saying this? I totally went on a tangent.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, basically the idea that you, as far as attending college, like, how was that going to be paid for?
Oh, right. So I went to Berkeley because I paid for Berkeley. And Berkeley at the time I remember I wrote the checks. It was $781 a semester for tuition. And, Art Center, even back then, was thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so, I didn't have the grades to get like a scholarship or anything like that. And I don't even know if I would have gotten in because, I'm like, I don't know if I would have a portfolio that would impress them to let me in, but that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't do it.
Sure. And I know that your kind of first experience, like you said, I mean, you were always kind of into music and you and your brother were bouncing stuff off of each other. And I know I've just seen you and heard you articulate in other interviews about, seeing the Dead Kennedys for the first time. That was like your quote unquote awakening of like, oh, this is what, more independent music that is like not on the radio, and this is very visceral to me and exciting. It seems like to me at that particular time when Dead Kennedys were playing is like they very much put on, an overall experience. Like it was like church, but obviously not church. Would you characterize it like that, or was your experience different?
I've actually not had an experience, and you have to take into account like my age and naivete, whatever, I can say that word, whatever.
Yep.
At the time, and being little, being like a runt, and also, I was like an existential, like I had an existential sort of attitude. I wasn't stupid at the time, but I wasn't, particularly like worldly. Actually, I was very unworldly, and my brother and I had been going to like heavy metal shows because we were into like Metallica and Slayer and Exodus and these bands that were, club bands at the time in the Bay Area. And I just liked those things from face value. It was fast. It looked cool. And I liked the way the logo was or whatever. They wore spikes or whatever. And then I went to this one show, and the show, like in retrospect, is so amazing. It was Marginal Man, Subhumans, the UK Subhumans, I think Scream, and Dead Kennedys. And it was this place called The Farm in San Francisco, which was probably like 900 people or 600 people, or I don't know. But to me, like it felt like a stadium show. I had no like really grasp of how big it was. But unlike what would follow in the decades, and I'm not trying to romanticize it, it was a real punk rock show without the Dead Kennedys, because like it was just a different time. First of all, it was complete outsider music. There was no like, hey, I'm coming to this because it's cool, because there was nothing cool about it for people outside of punk rock. But B, like Subhumans too, but Dead Kennedys, he seems like so self-assured and smart and very articulate. And then also we had this like show business thing with the miming and everything. It felt bigger than life in the way that, years later I felt like whatever, seeing Radiohead was in a completely different way. Whereas like, like seeing Exodus at Ruthie's at a little club, it didn't seem bigger than life. It just seemed like music. And I don't want to come down on Exodus. I still love the first Exodus record, for example, but it seemed really stupid in comparison to, a rendition of Police Truck live and actually started hearing the lyrics a little bit. I was just like, whoa, they're singing about real things and things that I should be like considering a little bit more than I do in my little, Berkeley, like semi-suburban lifestyle where I just don't think about anything about the world.
Sure.
And it's just a complete shift, like in real time, kind of like I changed, which is weird to say because it is just music or just as entertainment. But it was, I mentioned that I was already sort of like existential, sort of like I had awareness of that kind of stuff. And I attribute that to a couple of things, but part of it was that I took acid at a really young age. And I'm not suggesting anyone should do acid or anything, but I saw shit that changed I just saw the unmaterial world, so to speak. And whoa, there's shit out there. Like the world, life is more like the Twilight Zone than it is like the Brady Bunch. Like this is a fucking bizarre situation I find myself being on this planet.
Merchandise is a part of all of our lives, whether or not you know it, because, some people just go to like some random department store or whatever and buy stuff, but that's not you. You like to support bands and you like to support independent businesses. So how about you do both by going to rockabilia.com and use this promo code 100 words or less. It gets you 10% off of your whole order. So let me do the math for you. You buy $100 worth of stuff, I give you $10 off. That's great. That's basically me putting money directly into your pocket. But what is cool about Rockabilia is I don't care what band you're into, they definitely have something from them. They also started stocking comics, which is really, really cool, but like music comics. You're not talking about like, the latest Spider-Man or whatever. We're talking about comics that feature like Motley Crue, Grateful Dead, Dio, Sublime, all over the board, but it's really cool. And then on top of it, they also have a limited edition Cannibal Corpse skate deck. I bet you didn't think that you needed that in your life, but then you go to the website and you're like, well, I kind of got to get it there. But 500,000 items, quick shipping from the Midwest. I love this company. I love what they do. And again, use the promo code 100 words or less, 10% off of your entire order. Eternal gratitude to rockabilia.com. Have fun shopping on their site. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that therapy is a good thing. I love therapy. I've gone to it myself because you run into those things, whether it's personally, professionally, relationship-wise. All of these things can be thrown at us, and it can feel really overwhelming. And if you don't have a person to talk through whatever issues you're going through, you're going to feel lost, and no one wants to feel that way. If you are thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is an amazing option. It's really convenient, flexible, affordable, and here's the kicker, it's entirely online, which makes it very easy. You can just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and if you feel like it, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Trust me, if you want to unlock some of your potential that you have in your life, BetterHelp is a great way to do it. So visit betterhelp.com/Ray today to get 10% off of your first month with BetterHelp. Therapy is amazing. Give BetterHelp a try. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Ray and get 10% off of your first month. Do it. Therapy is right there for you. I mean, I have to ask if was that a intentional, you meant to take acid and then friends were doing it, or what was the vibe?
Yeah, I grew up in Berkeley, California.
That's true.
So, now it seems like really crazy to do acid at such a young age, but I hadn't drank a beer yet when I did acid. I don't think I smoked pot yet. And the prevailing attitude amongst my friends and I was acid wasn't that bad of a thing. Looking back, I think particularly street acid, is a bad thing because it's not really acid. It's like some kind of approximation of what, the intent of the guy invented acid had.
Sure.
But, for better or for worse, I say, and I would have discovered as everyone does, the larger concepts of existence and blah, blah, blah. And at some point, of course, but I discovered it before I actually discovered awareness of anything political or anything sociological, just the issues that are brought up when you listen to some more thoughtful kind of punk rock like the Dead Kennedys, right? I was just, completely a dipshit kid that was just unaware of it. And whether I even understood anything about the Dead Kennedys in that era of my life or anything, it just made, dragons and banging your head sound stupid. Suddenly I was like, I'm a punker, like Circle Jerks and Bad Brains and Minor Threat and Dead Kennedys is now my thing. Not so much Exodus and Laws, Rocket, and Merciful Fate and all that stuff. Although, I still have an affinity for all that stuff too.
Right. Yeah. It's not what you gravitate towards. And I do think that, you articulate something that I think a lot of people feel once their world becomes cracked open, that they understand that music has, for lack of a better term, a pulse to be able to showcase the larger world and not just this, whatever fantasy / entertainment that a lot of, young kids gravitate towards. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. And the thing is that I did it again. Then you might have read this if you read the other thing. It happened to me again, when I saw Sonic Youth. And then by then I was actually in college. But I saw Sonic Youth, I think in the Evolve tour maybe. And I never really went back to being fully into punk rock after that, because I was by then I was more, and I still am now, I don't like stupid music with stupid lyrics or stupid concepts, but I'm much more of a music person and melody person and songwriting person than I am of getting out a message or music that has an agenda of any kind, right? So being political or being straight edge or being whatever in your music isn't going to get me into your music as much as being musical. And oddly enough, Sonic Youth was kind of the band that changed my mind. I turned into more like an indie rocker, and actually a wider group, expanded the set of what I was into from seeing Sonic Youth, even though Sonic Youth is not, then especially, was not the most melodic of bands. But, you know, I remember being in the audience. Actually, I was on stage for part of the show because these it's kind of a dumb story, but Firehose opened, and during Firehose, the guy threw his sticks out. And like I said before, I was a drummer at the time. So I put the drumsticks in my back pocket, and these two security guards grabbed me right when Firehose ended, or right before they ended, took me backstage and said, "Where'd you get those? You stole those, huh?" And I go, "No, I'm a drummer. I brought them home." It was a stupid lie, but I was a young, dumb guy. And they were like, "We're going to wait back here until the band ends, and I'm going to ask them. I'm going to ask the opening band if it's their drum sets. If it is, you're out of here." Right. And I was nervous, but I was young and dumb, and I had a little bit of bravado. But I was like looking around, and I was like, "That's Kim Gordon. There's more. That's the guys in the opening band, the band called Angst." And I was like, "What?" And then and then they left me, and then I watched the first half of the set of Sonic Youth from the side of the stage. I looked over, and my friends saw me on stage, and they were like, "What the fuck is you doing up there?" But between the bands, they brought me over to this George Hurley, the drummer of Firehose and Minuteman, and said, "Are these your drumsticks?" And George Hurley was a very cool man. He put his arm around me, and he walked me 2 feet away from these two guys. And he could easily just not care or whatever. And he said to me, "Hey, these guys are going to take you around back, and they're going to kick your ass, and they're going to do it because for the fun of it, not for some kind of like drumstick justice, right?" Right. And I sort of laughed it off or whatever, but I was also just like what? I don't get what's going on here. Right. And looking back, I was like, damn, that George Hurley, what a guy, because he was looking out for a kid. I can't say looking back, what a cool guy that guy was. But anyway, he lied for me because I think it was his drumsticks. And I then sat there watching Sonic Youth from the side of the stage. The film one, I was like this thing, and my friends saw me, and then I did a stage dive and went back there, and they were like, "What the hell have you been?" It's a long story. But that whole night was just so wacky and crazy, and I was so mesmerized by this like noisy, more like indie rock thing that, from that day on, like I still loved Bad Brains, I still loved Minor Threat, but like then I was just like almost instantaneously drawn to, My Bloody Valentine and Dinosaur Jr. and Teenage Fan Club, all the bands that came. And then by the time I did Samiam, like, okay, so we're a Gilman, we should play something kind of punk rock. And I was like, but I'm writing or interested in writing songs that are way outside of this, because I'm not listening to punk rock as much, and I'm listening to like indie rock. And I started listening to Beatles, and started listening again from my childhood to like 60s music and soul. And yeah.
No, I love that.
These pivotal things. And it's interesting that, like, I guess I say it a lot when I do interviews, so that like, you somewhere heard or read me say that. Mm-hmm. I'm repeating myself over and over again, but it's really true. Like, I have these pivotal things, and Dead Kennedys and Sonic Youth, like, are two things that changed me.
Absolutely. Well, especially when you can distill it down to that, I think it's important to continue to articulate whenever you have a moment. So yeah, I totally get it. Something I also found extremely interesting, because I wasn't aware of the, you being on the literal ground level of the Gilman Street, and obviously the venue and the legendary, 924, all that sort of stuff. And I know that you have regaled people with the story of you doing the first count in, so to speak, because you were playing drums for your band Soup. as you started to, after that first show and as you started to see that community start to grow and people go into shows and that sort of stuff, was that like exciting for you, or was that just something that you were, kind of just observing sort of indifferently? And I don't mean that in a bad way, just kind of observing.
No, it was definitely exciting for me. Like any kind of like scene and stuff, people romanticize it now, and people love to say how it wasn't like other scenes. Everyone was so supportive of each other. There was no jealousy and blah, blah, blah. No shit talking and stuff. And they make documentaries about it. And people just, if you're a Green Day fan, you're just like, oh my God, I wish I could have seen Green Day at Gilman in 1988 or whatever. But if I'm 100% honest, there was a lot of fucking shitty stuff about it. And there was a lot of like older people involved. This is something people don't talk about. There was a lot of older people involved in Gilman, and some older people involved that are kind of like heralded as godfathers of Gilman. They're up to some kind of nefarious shit with younger people. And I don't want to get into it or stuff. And there's a couple of ones that did actually get like criminal things and stuff. And my point's not to bring this up or be disparaging of people, but it wasn't like some fantasy world of greatness. There's some. It was cool, and there's some cool shit about it, and there's some not so cool shit about Gilman. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just think it's because a lot of people can view their childhood, venue through rose-colored glasses. I do appreciate the fact it's like there's, especially too, with like when you start building something and you have all of these people from different sides of the community of all different ages, like, yeah, sometimes the subculture is going to be wrapped up in, weird, not saying that this happened at Gilman, but like, drug deals and like all of these, backdoor activities that may influence the fact that this can like stay open because someone is doing something. So I totally get it, but I was just curious about how the energy felt.
Like for me, looking back, like the energy of, it's a funny word to use, big for what I'm about to say, but the energy of like Op Ivy was amazing. And the energy actually of Jason's old band, which was one of the first big local bands of Gilman, Isocracy, was amazing. And it was amazing to be part of, but it sure didn't feel like how it's remembered now. And that's because no one knew that meant that there was going to be something called Green Day and something called Rancid and something called AFI that came out of it, right? So at the time, it was like, wow, this is really cool, but I didn't, have any perception of it being as big as it ended up being, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I always found it interesting, like in observing Samiam, the formation of it, starting in the early 90s, as far as, you guys really getting out there and putting out records and stuff. And because it was that, boom of independent music being discovered from, grunge and obviously punk and all areas of the world from a independent music perspective were being mined. And you guys got thrown into a lot of weird and wild experiences of just like, oh, I guess we'll play Jon Stewart's show. And like, you just, all of these interesting things that, most bands wouldn't experience. Besides that random television appearance on Jon Stewart's show, is there anything else that sticks out in your mind of being like, dude, this is, I can't even believe we're doing this. Doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah. We're characterized often and we're written about often in books and articles about the failures of the major label 90s boom. And there's a lot of truth that to the statement that Samiam was like, abject commercial failure. But the people that would focus on the fact that we failed from like a monetary standpoint don't actually realize some of the incredible like life experiences that came with it. playing in front of thousands of people, and just all the experiences that come around with what we did for those couple of years. And when it was a real sin to be signed to a major label, we were asked particularly right after when we were just unceremoniously just kicked to the curb from that world. They would ask leading questions and stuff about like, wow, you guys really got screwed. You got the short end of the stick. And even when the sting of being, kicked out of the party was still fresh, like I honestly, felt like, if they asked, would you do it again? I would go, yeah, I would do it again, because it didn't turn out as well as it did for, Green Day or Offspring or whoever. But it was a wild ride, and I bought my first house with the advance money that we took.
Sure.
So like I was a guy in my 20s with a house suddenly.
Right. Yeah, that's not normal. Right, I get it.
Normal. And you bring up the Jon Stewart show, which it's just one show, it's just one night, and it wasn't like we didn't play Letterman or whatever. But I do remember, being extremely nervous when we went from the under the bleachers, like that show was in a sound system where a sound stage in a building where they also, another floor was like Maury Povich, and it was in New York. And we had like a full on like, wow, this is a crazy, we got picked up by a limo from a hotel, and the limo driver didn't know us from Frank Sinatra or
yeah, of course. You were huge, right? Yeah.
He was this, African immigrant guy, and he was like excited to talk to us, and he was like whatever, and we were like no, we're nobody, whatever. But it was exciting and fun until the 10 minutes before we had to go, and we went from the dressing room under the bleachers, because there was like 400 people or something in these bleachers way back behind the cameras. And we had to walk under the bleachers and then go on stage. And I wasn't, we were on tour all the time, and I wasn't worried about playing bad or fucking up a song or anything. We had that. We knew that was covered. But I was like, please don't break a string, or please amp don't break, or please don't do something that looks stupid, like slip or something. Mm-hmm. And I was freaking out. Like, I was like, oh shit. But right at the end of the walk to the bleachers, I looked up, and this is way before Shepard Fairey was a household name, or before the clothing company. I think it was 1994. It was just a sticker, and it was a very ubiquitous sticker when you were on tour. You'd see like the Obey sticker with Andre the Giant and stuff everywhere. But it was a thing of like counterculture. It was a thing of like punk rock or hip hop or whatever it was associated with at the time. And right on the last little bar of the cap of the bleachers, there was an Obey sticker right there. And I remember like there was some guy with a headset, and a clipboard, and he was going to tell us when to, like walk over to our gear to, pick up a guitar and drums and whatever and start playing. I just look up and I see the sticker, and I don't know, it sounds like I'm bullshitting, and this is some kind of fairy tale memory of it. But I remember like a calm coming over me, seeing the sticker, and it was sort of like I was getting nervous in that way that you get out of body, like, oh shit, I'm gonna fuck up, or like this is scary. But I saw the sticker, and it kind of calmed me, and it helped me calm down before we did it, and everything went fine or whatever. But I just so remember seeing that sticker, and it was like it was still surreal, but it just made me feel like, okay, this is not such a big deal. I don't know why, but yeah, right.
It's like that some signpost of independent culture has been through here, so it's like, oh, okay, like cool. This isn't so far removed from my world, just like a little breadcrumb. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was neat. Like we went to this bar, it's called Joe's Bar, later that night, and it aired, and we aired it. We were playing pool at the bar, and there was, I got 40 locals sit in the bar, and we asked the bartender if they could turn down the music and put up the TV volume, and everyone in the bar watched Samiam on Jon Stewart and clapped for us. No one knew who we were, cared who we were, but they were like, "Oh, these goofy guys over here." And I remember just going like, "Wow, like we did that." That was
that's us on there. That's really cool.
It was, it's so like compared to what other bands do, it was so fucking amazing. And all, we played in front of like tens of thousands of people when we did like radio. We did whole tours that were radio tours, right? Like where you play and it's like Black Crowes and whoever. And then we're just the band that has one song on the radio right now. And then we're singing in front of 35,000 people at like Edge Fest 105, like 97 or whatever, in like whatever city we were in. And all those shows weren't rewarding like a real Samiam show. It was kind of amazing to stand in front of like, I think the biggest one we did was like 45,000 people kind of show. Jeez. And like I say, it's not the number of people in front of you. It's not what makes a show rewarding, but it's a neat little thing to do just to have in your like Rolodex of memories later in life. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's just those little earmarks of something. It's like, well, we're probably never going to experience this again, so let's go ahead and soak it up. Not like you can really have perspective on it when you're in the middle of it, but you can try to.
We did it though. That's the thing. It's like when we do those, we did it. We would do it for like a week and a half straight, hitting all these. Like in LA, you have the Weenie Roast, which we didn't play, but we'd play these big ass radio shows like night after night, and it was just like, yeah. And it's the same thing when we play like the Warped Tour, although that's only like 8 or 5 or 10,000 or whatever it was, or opening up for Green Day or Bad Religion or whatever. But I mean, none of those shows were like 45,000 or anything.
Right. Yeah.
Like we went to Japan and we did the United States with Green Day when they were a huge band. Not as huge as they are now, I guess, but a huge band. And it was particularly Japan. That tour was kind of crazy. And the things we did off stage were crazy. Even actually to say like that tour, I thought about that tour when I did an interview the other day, and the shows were great and whatever. And that's fun. But what we did, what we got into outside of the shows was just so, like, looking back, so incredible. I'm just like, wow, I'm sure glad we did that.
Pull out your web browser, please, and type in evilgreed.net, and then you will be open to a world of amazing web stores. What is Evil Greed? You're probably like, I don't know, it's probably some like merch thing. It is, but they are the leading purveyor of web store solutions for bands over in Europe. But the thing is they open up web stores for record labels and bands, and they ship it right to you, the consumer. I know that isn't a novel idea, but the thing about Evil Greed is they specifically curate this list of bands and record labels that they work with that all kind of operate under a theme, whether it's like artistically forward-thinking music, like that's my own description. That's not something they provided, but evilgreed.net. Go to the website and use this promo code. This will get you 10% off your entire order. The promo code is 100 words. Let me just list some of the bands that they work with, whether it's Botch, Death Heaven, Power Trip, Gulch. We're talking about Gatecreeper, Bloody Incantation. The list can go on and on and on. And I know what you're thinking. You heard me talk about it being this company located in Germany. It's like, oh man, that's a little intimidating. No, it's not. If you're located here in America, they ship to you, and they ship to you very quickly and efficiently. We're not talking about like, oh, cool, I'm buying one piece of vinyl and like the shipping fees are like $25. They don't mess with that. The exchange rate is in our favor right now. So go to evilgreed.net, use the promo code 100 words, 10% off your entire order. And why don't you buy me that, that Nails hoodie that you've been eyeballing for quite some time? I wear a large in case you're wondering, if you just want to give it to me as a gift. But, anyways, evilgreed.net, 100 words is the promo code, 10% off your entire order. Have fun shopping.
This summer will be the most fun and safest with swim lessons from British Swim School. Offering swim lessons to babies and kids across the U.S., British Swim School gives you the confidence to let your little ones enjoy pools and lakes safely. British Swim School has highly trained instructors who specialize in fun and gentle teaching in a small class environment. Sign up for classes now at BritishSwimSchool.com. That's BritishSwimSchool.com. British Swim School. Make a splash.
And speaking of touring and everything like that, did you take to it right away, or did you have to, I guess, warm up to the idea of like what tour actually is versus what maybe the perception was in your mind?
Oh, well, like I've already said this, I was not only a runty kid and like shy kid. I've been that like a runty adult,
Sure.
pretty shy adult. So I don't think it would be any surprise to anyone that knew me that like when we first started touring, I would get like homesick. And I'd be a little bitch when we'd break down. And I remember, I don't know why this came to my mind. I remember on a particularly long tour, like a month and a half without being home, that I got in an argument with Marty, our bass player. And the argument was I was in charge of the money and everyone wanted to split up money so they could blow money on tour and have fun. And I was just like, I know how it is at the end of the tour. Everyone complains about not making enough money or whatever, and complains money. So I was particularly miserly about doling it out for people to blow so that at the end of the tour I don't have to hear like, where did the fucking money go? And from his perspective, it's like, I just fucking want to like go over to whatever Subway and get a sandwich or whatever. Can we just split up, $100? And I guess I argued with and then looking back, understandably, he was like, it wasn't understandably his language, but he just called me a fucking Jew, and it hit hard, right? Like I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. Not only did I just hand over all the money and right then to say someone else has to take care of the money, but and then he took me outside. We were in a hotel. He took me outside, and he was tearing up, and I was tearing up and choking up, and he apologized, said, I don't have anything like remotely like against Jewish people or anything like that. If you know anything about me, I just blurted it out because I was pissed, and that was like, right,
right. That was your visceral reaction, right? I just want to get a reaction.
It was his.
Right. Yes, yeah, right.
Maybe the emotion of like being apologized to, which is very hard for people to do, and like a lot of people in my life are incapable of apologizing. It's not particularly hard thing for me to do, to say I'm sorry, and I actually do it on a semi-regular basis. But a lot of people in my life can't say sorry, and I understand when someone has some kind of phobia of saying sorry and they can't say it. I don't say I love you very often, so I understand it. But hearing it from somebody like made me really emotional. I remember like I think I full on did cry when he said it too, let alone me choked up. But I remember that just being like everything leading up to that for Marty too, actually. That's why he blew up. It was like particularly hard, and homesickness and being poor, because when you're in Samiam in 1991 and whenever you're fucking a poor person, it was a lot. And other people are, tour is great. I love touring, everything about touring and stuff. And it's like, I did love touring, and I did take to it and I liked it. But it was tough. And there were some like low points and stuff, and I'm like I said, not to keep on saying runty, but like I was like very like I am a very sensitive person, and so it was rough. And
sure,
it still is rough. Even though I don't really, when like Samiam goes into tour, we never really worry about money. We make money. Doesn't make anyone rich, but we make money and we can do things. But like with Ways Away, my other band, or other bands I've been in, we don't make money in recent years. We don't make money, and that could be tough.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. For sure. And speaking of other bands, like I'm a huge fan of Knapsack and the work you did with that band as well. And like you mentioned, Ways Away, I find it interesting because you, arguably have been pretty prolific with, Knapsack, Ways Away, Solea, obviously the Felled Trees project that you did. And it seems like you can insert yourself with a lot of different collaborative partners, no matter sort of what the circumstance is, and understanding the role that you fill, where it's like Knapsack as an example, like clearly that's Blair's vehicle and he's the creative director, as it were, with that.
Yeah.
I guess what in your personality makes you able to collaborate with so many different people and so many different personalities?
Well, I'm like a really big giant fan of humility in life, as a character trait. For example, when I think of actors that I love, I never loved Tom Cruise. I never loved actors that are just badasses only, right? And there's a number of actors like that. And then there's actors, I'm not saying I love Nicolas Cage, but he's one of them that can show like complete weakness. And he plays roles where he is, or Seymour Philip Hoffman can just be a badass, or he could be a wimp. And John C. Reilly, or, just whatever. Because without humility or showing that you're weak, I can like you.
Okay.
I'm talking about relationship with males and actually alpha women too. If you don't like show weakness and you don't show some sort of submissiveness to other people, I can still like you, but generally I'm just not into that type of person, like toxic masculinity or toxic feminism, I guess, feminist, whatever. It's not really a gender thing. And so anyway, the way I am with being a member of a band is like, I don't sing, right? And I know that like music, people do respond to the music and people do like the bands I'm in because they do like the music. But the thing that's really drawing people in is the singer and the lyrics, and that Blair or Jason could be in a band with another guy writing other music and be great. But I'm pretty much nothing without a great singer, or at least a singer with an interesting voice, an interesting point of view and stuff. And I think I'm not a great guitar player by any means, but I think I'm kind of like a really good art director, so to speak. Like I only play with people and only devote like all this energy I put in my life with music that are worth a shit, right? Like Garrett, you brought up Solea, or Jesse and Waysway, or Jason, or Jason and Blair, who I feel like are two of the best people to ever do this, at least in the context of like punk rock or indie rock. And I think the thing about me is I'm aware of that fact. Whereas a lot of people in bands, it's like they're in it for their own ego, and they don't even think about the fact that they're just the bass player, or they're just the drummer, or just the guitar player. And really they're there to back up the singer. And I think when I was younger, also, I didn't come to this realization. But at some point I did. And, I think it's my biggest trait in terms of being in a band is that humility and understanding of my role, which is a support role, not like a lead.
Center stage, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And specifically with Ways Away, I know that project has resonated with, a lot of people from kind of all areas of the spectrum, just because you have this interesting combination of different people that all have operated within the punk and hardcore scene, but all are different, generationally speaking, where it's like, you have old heads like yourself, and then you have like medium heads like Jesse or whatever. And so how being able to collaborate with people of that nature too, I'm fascinated by the, I guess like how the creative flow goes with that. Is it one of those things where you guys all are kind of just like, tossing random riff ideas to each other just because like everybody in the band is, prolific when it comes to ideas as far as songs are concerned.
Well, in Solea and Ways Away, I was the maestro. So like I'm lucky enough in Ways Away that like I'm in a band where I'm not saying anyone in Ways Away were like huge Sam I Am fans, but they all respect me enough to like say musically, like Sergie's sort of the guy, and he writes almost all the music. Whereas like Sam I Am's a complete compromise between me and particularly the other guitar player. But with that said, like, so I'm sort of like, I'm conducting the ship when it comes to the music. Which isn't to say that like Ian, the bass player, and Jared, the drummer, and Jesse also, who does write some of the few of the songs musically, don't have huge contributions and don't make these songs way better than I would be if I was working in a vacuum by myself. They do. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned sort of like when I was in with Blair, it's like Blair's the dude, and that's very true. I just lost my a train of thought. I don't know what I'm getting at here. What was the question?
No, you're totally fine. That's basically just the idea of being able to. Like you said, you were the maestro of Ways Away and Solea, and then understanding how you can fit into a certain role, like using Knapsack as an example. Because,
yeah. Well, my point was though, it's like, but in Ways Away, like Jesse's, he's younger than me. I could be his father, actually, but he's the total alpha in that band, in that dynamic, and. And he is a singer and he's a leader and stuff. And I'm just there to support him, like I said before. But it is different with Ways Away than it is like, with recently in Racket Club or it is in Sam I Am, because there's no fighting at all. There's no arguing or anything, because I feel like musically, in fact, Jesse, sometimes when there is some kind of like confusion amongst the four of us of what to do, he's like, Sergie, just be an asshole and tell the drums and the bass and me what to play. It's your fucking song musically. And he said to me 1,000 times in the last, we made 2 records, and I can't do that. As much as actually maybe part of me would like to do that, I just can't be that guy. And I just want to keep it democratic. And occasionally I've actually, Alpha Sergie has raised this ugly head, and I have done that when I just feel like, oh God, this drum beat just does not work for the song, or this bass line is way not right. But in general, like I want to be 4 guys that, or in Sam I Am 5 guys, whatever, that everyone like feels like they have some like ownership to what we're creating together, right?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
And I respect like the guys that I play with. They're like, in every band that I play with, the people that play strings right now, like I play in 2 bands, or vaguely, maybe Knapsack will play shows, but in Sam I Am and in Racket Club, the people that play string instruments are way better at playing bass or guitar than I am at playing guitar. And both drummers are way better at playing drums than I am at playing guitar. And that's not being humble. That's just like objective fact. So it's a weird dynamic. Like it's a weird dynamic when I tell like Jared, the drummer of Ways Away, hey, can you do this? And that. And then he's such a great drummer. He just pulls it out of his asshole and like that. When if he said, well, can you play that like that? And I go, God, I wish I could, but I'm not good enough at guitar to do that.
Right.
Right? So it's like, it's kind of, it can be a sticky situation when I'm trying to tell someone else what to do, when it's like, oh, calm down, Sergie, like Mr. Maestro, dude, like you know who you are. Stop telling me, you concentrate on your shit and I'll concentrate on my shit, right? And it's like I have to always be like aware of that.
Right. You got to be mindful.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was the fact that there is, I know inside of you, at least I'm presuming, there is that need to, create. I mean, clearly, like you mentioned, you do it from a graphic design perspective, and you have done it for many years from a musical perspective. What keeps you attached to that creative process? Is it just because you don't know anything else, and so that's kind of the lane that you're in? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but just in like, oh, that's what I like to do. Or is there another kind of thing that you have audited yourself of why you like to be connected to that creative stuff that you do?
Yeah, when you say creative, do you say like anything I do creative, or you're just particularly talking about music?
No, like, I mean, because you're a graphic designer as well. So like being connected to that creative process in general.
I mean, I'm just super proud of the fact that I can say that I've almost never made a dime. From a work standpoint, not from like other ways that I've made money in my life, but I've never made any kind of living off any kind of work or job that wasn't creative. I'm really proud of that fact because, like a lot of people make a lot more money than I do doing and spend their life basically accumulating money for whatever reason they're doing it for, whether supporting a family or they're obsessed with being rich or why ever anyone does anything, who knows. But they do that by doing things they hate. Like, okay, this guy right here, he's on Wall Street. He has like $6 million in the bank. He has $50 million in the bank, but he wakes up every morning wanting to shoot himself in the face because he hates what he does. I'm like kind of the exact opposite of that. It's like I love what I do, whether it's like graphic design or music, and what I do might be like kind of on the lower echelon of what you could call like art or a contribution to culture. It's just fucking Samiam, or it's just my dumb little drawings or whatever. It's not hugely important in the scope of what we call culture 2023, but it's something. And I'm really just proud of that fact, what I just said. But I'm not an artist like an artist. When I think of an artist, I think of like, movies, like when they make a movie like a Jackson Pollock or any Basquiat movie where there are these incredible, almost like maybe mentally ill people that are so driven to do art, and they just eat, drink, sleep, shit, art, and they're just compelled, and they're just all their waking hour. They do art, and I'm not that guy. Like, and I feel embarrassed ever to use the word art or artist. I never have ever told anyone I'm a musician or I'm an artist when I meet them, because although I do a bit of concentrating in artistic or creative things, I wouldn't call myself an artist. I'm an artist, or maybe I'm scared of being perceived as one of those pretentious assholes. Yeah, it's weird. I guess there's a lot of definitions of art, and there's the pretentious, self-important, like definition of art, and then there's just art is just anything, and anything could be art. And I sort of subscribe to the latter. It's like, your 3-year-old daughter's finger painting, that's art just as much as the most heady cerebral art. It might not be as good art or whatever, but it's art. And if you use that like loose definition of what art is, it's like, yeah, I'm an artist.
Right. No, totally. And actually the last thing, just speaking of art, like, because you've existed in the graphic design world and done stuff, in and out of music, if you could, I realize I'm putting you on the spot here, but if you can reflect on, either a project, doesn't necessarily have to be in music, that you were, extremely proud of, that you worked on. Doesn't have to be something big either, but just something you're like, you know what, I was really proud of that thing that I did. I
do graphic design, and it started when Samiam started, or even before that, when I had a band called Sweet Baby. That was my first band, and I did the drawing for the album cover of that. And I did the back cover of like in the 80s, back cover of the first Mr. T Experience record. But then when Samiam started, I had to lay out the first Samiam 7-inch, and then the first EP, and then the album. And I laid all the Samiam stuff until the major label won. And then I started laying out other band stuff. And then somewhere in the mid to late 90s, I started doing mainly Fat records, but Epitaph, and there were so many other labels at the time, like Lookout, Kung Fu, and then I started doing major label stuff, and I've done I have a couple of gold records, for example, for I should have platinum records because I did the first two Avenged Sevenfold records, but they never got around to sending me that.
Sure.
And some of those things, I'll take Avenged Sevenfold, for example, that's a big band, and I did it, but the album cover and the logo and everything was actually done by a 13-year-old kid, or maybe an 11-year-old kid, which was the drummer's younger brother. And so my contribution was, I laid it out, but it wasn't my creative vision or anything. Whatever. So it's not how big, and in recent years I've done a lot of no effects stuff. Those are big records that people care about, but do I really care about that? Not really. I would say my own band stuff, including just even in recent times, the last two Ways Away records and Rag Club and the new Samiam record, I'm really kind of proud of that art. It's really not about you already said it. It's not about how big it is or how many people see it or how much money I made from it or anything. It's like anything. It's the same thing with a song. The biggest Samiam songs are the ones that are most plays on Spotify aren't necessarily the most rewarding ones to me that I made up. It's other ones that actually some of them have very low streams or whatever, and no one wants to hear them, but I'm really proud of them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah. Therein lies the rub sometimes, where the things that you are either most proud of or most excited, can fly under the radar, and that's fine because, ultimately it's still out there and people can react to it. But then the things that you're just I'll just put this out here, that it's oh, really? That's the thing you care about the most? I wasn't anticipating that.
Sometimes it's like that, but sometimes it's actually more obvious. I'll give an example, and it was on our last record, not our new one. But we recorded it for free in Green Day's fancy Star Trek kind of recording studio. This is 2011, 10 or 11, and so we did the music, and then it was time for Jason to sing. And one of the first songs he did was sing on this song, which is a mellow song, and it's not really a super Samiami sounding song. And it's a song that, if you look on Artists for Spotify, you can't, but I do because I have a login. It has extremely low, because in the end, I think it's the last song of that record, but it has extremely low streams, and no one has ever said to me, "Oh, I love that song called Happy for You," ever, right? And I don't think a lot of people consider it like a great Samiam song. But I remember sitting on this comfy couch in the control room while I was singing it, and he sang it, and then he came into the room, and I don't know who was in the room besides Chris, the guys recording it, and me, but. And mind you, I had been in this band for 20 years, and I've been I know what Jason's capable of, and I've been impressed by stuff he's done, and I've been not so impressed with stuff. But he came in and he had a freaking Hams in his can of beer in his hand. He comes in, he goes, "How was that? Was that okay? Did it sound like shit or whatever?" And I was like speechless. And I was also, this is going to sound really like goofy talking about my own band, but and part of it was the music too, because it, like, I think it sounded great and everything that we did. But most of it obviously was the lyrics and his voice and stuff. I was choking up as if I was listening to somebody else's band or whatever. And it's a memory that like, I've recorded millions of records, but like, it was like, and I didn't really let on to him, and he won't listen to this. He doesn't listen to this fucking podcast with Sergie Loobkoff on it. But I've never expressed it to him, and I didn't really express it to him then. I just croaked out, that sounds fucking great, right? But really what I wanted to do is just like, start crying and say, dude, that's the best thing you've ever done. And if you get run over by a truck on your way home right then, like, I don't care what anyone else says, like, you just did something that like, just like whatever, like hit me in the freaking dickhead,
Right. Yeah. Right. This was beautiful. Yeah.
Wow. And I hope actually, so, I don't know how many people listen to your podcast, especially when I'm the guest, but I hope a whole bunch of people go on Spotify or whatever and listen to that song. And I'm sure like thousands of them or hundreds of them or a big percentage will go, what's the big deal? That song sucks. Like, that's not why I go to Samiam. I don't like that. But I hope at least someone goes and listens to that and goes, oh, wow. Yeah. I always skip that song, but that's a fucking rad song. Or
right.
Really like freaking did something right there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I encourage people to do that. I know I will myself. So
yeah, it's an example though of what I'm saying. It's like, it's the same thing as like memorable shows where we played in front of like 50 people, as opposed to memorable shows or unmemorable shows where we played in front of thousands of people. It depends who you are and what you want to get out of it. But for me, I can honestly, I'm not just saying this to sound like, like an altruistic person, but it's not, the payback is not, for me, is not, what you might think it is with money or status or whatever, chicks, whatever that you might think. It's like things like that where I was like sitting there and it's like, I don't always think of Jason like I love fucking Jason and I'm so happy I know Jason. And he's been a part of my life for like 30 years. I don't often think of that. Like a lot of times I'm like, that fucking asshole stepped on my toe. Didn't say I'm sorry, fuck that guy,
Yeah.
And that's just a moment where I was just like, God, I'm so fucking lucky that I got to do this and I got this guy to like, sing on my dumb song or whatever. And like we did that record for free at Green Day Studio, and Billy Joe didn't say, hey, yeah, sure, go record for a month with your band, Jason, because he gives a shit about me. It's because Jason and Billy Joe have been friends for years and years. I mean, I know the guy and we went on tour with Green Day, but like, I'm extremely fortunate to be friends with Jason for a multitude of reasons, but like to be in that instance right then, it's like, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I very much appreciate you coming to hang out, and thank you for expanding on all these ideas and letting me bounce around your brain. I very much appreciate it.
Oh yeah, like I said before we got on, I listened to your podcast, and I just think not everyone is really that great at it. I mean, and a lot of people are really good at just being just a cursory interviewer, but like I've just noticed, I've listened to a lot of them, but like I listened recently, like within the last 6 months, to like the Walter one and to the Davey Havoc one, a couple other ones. And you have a way of making people feel like you're friends with them. Right. And, so I was really like kind of excited to do this podcast where, we have a record coming out and we're on a good label. So I've been doing a lot of interviews and a couple of podcasts, and I'm not always that excited to do it. So
yeah, no, well, I genuinely appreciate that. It's awesome. It's awesome to hear that. Epic chat, right? Sergie was just a great hang. And I know that I say that like almost after every single episode, but it's the truth. And I appreciate him reaching out. I appreciate the publicist of the stars, who is a previous guest of the show, James Goodson from Daisy and also Let's Go Publicity. Appreciate him connecting the dots to make it happen. And then next week, I have a live podcast coming to you from LDB Fest, Life, Death, Brigade Fest. I realized that I totally butchered the graphics for the festival as I was promoting the last live episode that we did. But I have Joey from Koyo, and I was about to say the entire band of Pain of Truth, but that's not true. I have the vocalist of Pain of Truth, which, please forgive me, his name is absolutely escaping me right now, and that's sad. But, I'm just being honest with you. So got a split Long Island podcast for next week. It's all live. It's all just really fun because the Pain of Truth conversation was very interesting because, all the Long Island bands are obviously friends with each other. And so there's a little bit of heckling going on, and it was really fun. So it was kind of, it didn't turn into like crowd work per se, but it was fun. So that's what we got next week. And until then, please be safe, everybody.
Leftovers or the DMV number 97 or house cleaning or Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hi, this is Chelsea Handler.
And I'm Catherine Law.
We are the hosts of the Dear Chelsea podcast, where we give advice to real-life people. Sometimes we have experts. Sometimes we have celebs on helping us.
Guests like Ross Matthews, Matthew McConaughey, Juliana Margulies, Gwyneth Paltrow, and so many more. We answer questions on anything from drugs to relationships. We've even broken people up.
Yes, I take a lot of credit for breaking people up. I am a relationship wrecker. And just motivation. Sometimes people just need a kick in the ass, and that's what I am. And we encourage people to live their lives truly, fully, and bravely. Listen to Dear Chelsea on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. Looking for a master's guide to the marketing world? From decades of experience, starting with building MTV, I've found it comes down to two things: math and magic. You'll hear unlikely visionaries from the frontiers of marketing share how they've used data, the math, and creativity, the magic, to launch their biggest, most impossible-sounding ideas. Listen to the new season of Math and Magic, Stories from the Frontiers of Marketing on our very own iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.